Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit, and so Brian, I was at a dinner recently with a lot of, let's say, a lot of famous people in technology, and and we're talking about sort of very
That's some
notable.
weird flex there.
And we're talking about notable incidents in technology, from last year, and the single most referred to incident, and and I think a lot of more than one person spoke of how jealous they were that you could do this, was your post and kind of statement around Coinbase being a mission driven company. So, and I know you've talked about this quite a bit, but I'm kind of curious, could you just lay out like what happened leading up to that, what the actual post was about,
Yeah,
and what
and
happened
why? Like,
and
why did
why?
you publish the post? What were you trying to get at while publishing it?
Yeah, so happy to talk about it. I mean, it's funny. Even to this day, it's been like a year and a half or more at this point, and I think still to this day, this is the thing people want to talk to me about at dinner parties. Fortune 500 CEOs and whatever. It's so I didn't really set out to do this as some big statement. I was sort of reluctantly dragged to this actually because um, basically we created this issue was bubbling up inside the company for 6 months or 12 months, where increasingly we were getting questions at town halls and things like that in my mind were just completely unrelated to the actual product and the company and the mission that we were building, and they were more and more about broader societal issues. And I think when a company is small, your Dunbar's number or your 300 people or 400
Mhm.
people, you can basically kind of know who everybody is, and you all kind of feel like one team. And then as companies get bigger, you have different offices in different locations, or you go remote, or you get to beyond a certain size where this. I think humans are inherently tribalistic, right? So they start to, if you don't have a strong competitor you're going against, or whatever bigger mission in the world, you have these internal factions, and people start to say, I'm not like on the Coinbase team, I'm on Coinbase Finance, or I'm on Coinbase New York, or I'm on Coinbase NFT or whatever. And so anyway, internally, we started to have another one of these little tribes develop, which was we're the employees and you're management. Okay, so the first time that
Yeah.
had really happened was maybe when we were around, I don't know, 600 people or something. And so we started to get these uncomfortable questions about broader societal issues, things which, frankly, I didn't feel very qualified to give opinions on. And it almost felt like I started really dreading these town halls, these open mic Q&As, because I'd get put on the spot and like I didn't really have good answers for these things. So this all kind of culminated with this was around the time of BLM and the George Floyd riots and things like that. And somebody put us on the spot and kind of at the Q&A and said, is Coinbase going to publicly support BLM? And I basically said, we're looking into that. I don't have an answer for you today. And they sort of pressed further with the open mic, right? And kind of said, that's not good enough. I need to know, are we going to support it or not? And I said, to be determined. Like, I haven't looked into it yet, right? And at that point, a large number of employees basically closed their laptops and walked out. It was a virtual walkout because we were in the middle of pandemic.
Wow.
But I had never experienced this before. Like I don't know how many people actually walked out. It was probably 300 or 400 or something like that. And so we kind of all got together as an executive team and said, well, what should we do? We got to get people back to work. We had our head of D&I there, and I remember asking him, okay, so tell me about BLM. What is it just supporting X, or is there other political movements here associated with it? And I think they gave me the best answer they could in the moment. I decided to put out a tweet saying we support BLM to get everybody back to work, but I really didn't feel good about it after doing it. And I think as the weeks ticked by, I started to feel like something's fundamentally broken here. We're not on the same page. Like, in my mind, we're all here to accomplish our mission, which is to increase economic freedom in the world. And I think crypto is this unique technology to go do that. It's going to be incredibly good for humanity. There's all these amazing downstream positive effects to economic freedom. But what does Coinbase have to do with police brutality or whatever, these other major issues in the world, which are incredibly important? But like, why are they walking out? So it didn't make sense. And I realized that there was a disconnect that had been forming. I went to go read a bunch of books about this. And I had heard people talking about this tangentially, how this kind of activism on college campuses like Jonathan Haidt's book and people like that, like this had started to come into companies, but I sort of discounted it honestly because I always thought, well, there's always been activism on college campuses, and it doesn't really. I hadn't seen it, and when I went to go back and watch some of the videos that had spurned a lot of this, I was recognizing the language in the way that people were coming to me as a CEO and talking about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is literally the same thing. And so at that point, I started to write down my thoughts into this blog post, and I went through 3 or 4 drafts of it. Oftentimes, what I do if I'm trying to figure something out, I try to write because it helps clarify my thinking. And the first few drafts, I didn't like it. It didn't make any sense. It sounds like Steven does the same thing. And finally, I wrote this draft, and I started to circulate it to the board and the exec team and some of the VPs on our team. And some of the people on our team came to me and were like, "Do not post this. Oh my gosh, like this is going to be a terrible thing for the company." People told me, you will never hire another like URM, underrepresented minority person at this company if you do this. And so I went to go talk to some of our employee resource groups about this, and I was like, this felt weird to me. How does it feel to you? Like, what's the most important thing about for you working here? And they basically told me things like, we want to be respected at work, we want to learn, we want to grow in our careers, we want to, and it was like nothing to do with this activism stuff. And so I started to develop this theory that there's actually a very small group of people in the organization, maybe 1 to 5%, something like that, that are really believing that it's their view or their job to sort of hold the company's feet to the fire, to pivot the company towards these issues which they feel are important. But I started to believe by going and talking to some of the employee groups, like in small sessions, this is actually not a widely held view. It's internally, if you looked at our Slack and our Q&A, like it was probably 60, 70, 80% of questions at town halls. But I realized this was kind of like the tyranny of the 1% or something. It was a small group of people, and other people may have felt uncomfortable like I did, but they didn't want to speak up against it because they were afraid of being called racist or whatever. And so this, the real turning point, which made me do it, which ordinarily I would not, I'm a relatively conflict avoidant person. I don't like taking stands like on big tribalism issues at all. I think there's a reasonable middle ground for all of these things. The thing that made me actually post it was, I was like, I don't think the job as CEO is fun anymore, right? Like I basically don't want to come in and have to walk on eggshells around everybody and like feel, like I'm being, having to answer all the hardest societal problems in society when we're supposed to be focused on this other thing. So I was like, either this is now the job of being a CEO is just this in our modern era, in which case I don't think I want to be a CEO, or they're the wrong people in the company and I got to get them out. And I talked to a couple of friends about it, and they were like, look, this is your company. Like, if you don't like what they're doing, like, find a way to get them out and move the company in the direction you want to go in. Because it would be a damn shame if you like left Coinbase right now. You've been working on this thing 8 or 9 years, and okay, you could start some other company, but like these things have compounding returns. After 8 or 9 years, you have certain resources and you're a certain size, you can now tackle bigger projects. And like, they're like, what is the next decade going to look like? And the third decade after that. And so basically I slept on it, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to leave this company. Like if either I got to go or they got to go, it means they got to go. And so I did post it. It was stressful for a few weeks. We got lots of negative press, stuff like that. We offered exit packages to the employees who weren't on board with it. And I was literally like almost on the verge of tears as I was presenting this to the company, because I was like, I knew how much this was going to piss people off. And 5% of employees took the exit package. Within like a month or so, it turned out to be net positive in terms of like people started applying to the company who were like, that's the environment I want to work in. A bunch of people left who, were frankly very influenced by the headlines. They were like, I kind of don't feel that. I kind of agree with you, Brian, but like my friends and family are all like pinging me, telling me how I can work at this terrible company because of all the headlines. Who, basically, if people still believe like mainstream media headlines, it's hard to sort of change their view. So yeah, I'd say after a month or so, it turned out to be very positive. And I'd say a year in or so, it turned out to be one of the greatest things I'd ever done for the company, in almost a kind of a contrarian way. So it was a lot of interesting lessons there, and it was a good leadership moment for me to basically say, you know what, if I really want to do something and it feels authentic, I should just do it, even if some percentage of people are not going to like it.